This is our ultimate guide to the pork belly burnt end. So pork belly burnt ends are a really delicious indulgent option and take less than half the cooking time to brisket burnt ends. So first thing we need to do is get our kettle all set up for low and slow cooking. So what I've done to set up our kettle for low and slow cooking is using the snake method. If you were to continue this chain the whole way around the kettle, it would last 12 plus hours, but today we only have a cook time of around 4.5 hours. So I'm doing a condensed version here and calling this one the sleepy lizard method. And then what we do is just light about 8 to 10 briquettes in a chimney starter. So this will give us the initial low and slow temperatures of around 120 degrees, and then that chain will slowly burn throughout the cook time. So I have just over a kilo piece of pork belly here. It does have the rind on, so first thing I'm going to do is just remove that. This is a lot easier to do when it's nice and cold because that fat is still solid. So get your sharp knife and then we can just insert that in. Now I like to leave as much fat behind as possible because I think that makes these extra juicy. So whenever I'm trimming, the first thing I like to do is create a little bit of a handle or a flap. So if I just insert my knife in and then cut towards a corner, this creates a bit of an edge or a flap that I can then hold on to. Then I just slide my knife in and kind of angle it up towards that rind, so I'm cutting as much or as close to that rind as possible, leaving as much fat behind. As you're working your way through the belly, keep changing up the angles that you're working through. Keep swapping your knife around and moving anywhere needed. It does get a little bit trickier at that thinner end where there's less fat to work with, but just take your time. Now that's about as complicated as this recipe gets. Don't throw out that rind. You can deep fry it and create some delicious pork cracklins if you like. Now I am just going back through and trimming off some of that fat because it is very thick at that end. It's probably 1.5 to 2 centimeters thick, so we'll just trim that down to about 1 centimeter or less, up to you. A lot of that does render out through that first stage of the cooking process, so we do want to keep some of it there for flavour. Now that is all trimmed up and looking fabulous, it's time to cut it into cubes. With brisket burnt ends, what they would usually do is cook it low and slow until it's all delicious and umptuous, slow cooked. They would then cut it up, sauce it, toss it back on the barbecue for about half an hour just for that sauce to set. But with pork belly burnt ends, what we're going to do, because we're reducing that cook time, we need to shrink the size of it. So essentially we're just going to cut it up into 3 by 3 centimeter cubes. And this is an excellent size that when you cook it low and slow, it's not going to be too small that it completely dries out, but it's big enough that it will last that whole cook time and just be nice and tender at the end of it. So just cut that up. And our briquettes are ready, so let's get this all set up and then we'll come back to seasoning these. Now that our briquettes are lit, we can just add them to the start of our sleepy lizard. And then I'm going in with a drip pan, filling this with hot water, and what this will do is help to regulate the temperature inside the barbecue, but also added moisture inside the barbecue for low and slow cooking is always a really great way to go. Now what we can do is add on our wood chunks. Now we can add our cooking grill in, and we're just going to leave this preheat for about 5 to 10 minutes until we see that beautiful smoke coming out the barbecue. I like to turn the air vent above the fire for maximum airflow to get it going. And then what we can do is turn it around or adjust it as needed throughout the cook time to maintain that temperature. Chunks are the way to go when low and slow cooking. They give you that longer burn time so you get maximum smoky flavour on your foods. Save wood chips for whenever you're quick cooking. Once our temperature has reached around 120 to 135 degrees, we're just going to go in and adjust our P vent at the bottom of the kettle to our smoke setting. The last thing we need to do is season our pork. I just have some of our updated Weber pork rub here. Going in, seasoning it all over. We have 6 sides to coat this with. Now there is heaps of flavour in this pork rub, so you don't need to go too heavy with it. Remember, these should be bites, 1 bite, maybe 2, but you don't want it to be too overpowered by that pork rub. When designing this pork rub, I kept it really traditional, so we always love that beautiful paprika colour there. There's a bit of sugar in there for added caramelisation. We've got garlic, a little bit of chilli for some heat in there, and also those beautiful smoked ingredients. So Really nice journey of flavours without being too much. Look at that, beautiful. Literally getting smoke signals right now and it smells delicious. These are ready to go straight on. Now that our cooking grill has preheated, I'm just going in with a quick brush and then we can start adding our pork belly cubes straight on. I like to place them fat side up, so as it's cooking and rendering, that fat melts all over the meat there. Also placing the larger ones towards the fire. Just make sure you keep them in that indirect zone. So as the snake moves along, it's going to burn along and obviously had direct heat straight underneath. So just make sure that you're avoiding that. Or as a nice easy guide, just place them straight on top of that drip pan. This smoke is absolutely perfect. Exactly what I'm looking for. It's got that nice blue tinge, which is telling me that the smoke is really clean inside the barbecue, and it's just streaming out and it smells amazing. So we're just going to leave these long, slow smoke and cook away for about 2 hours. They'll be beautifully smoky and caramelized on the outside with that bark starting to form. After that point, we'll come back and pop them into a bath with our delicious sauce and honey. Our pork belly has been on for 2 hours. I'm checking it out and it looks great. We have that really nice color on the outside. The fat has started to render. They've got a really nice amount of smoke now, so it's a good time to get onto that tenderization. So we're putting them straight into a foil boat with some barbecue sauce, honey and water. These can go straight into the tray. So essentially we're going to be using the boating method here, which is just adding the liquid and then we're covering it with foil. Now we've got our pork belly in our tray, single layer, going on with my barbecue sauce. So I have a copy of this recipe included, so you are welcome to use this one or your own favorite barbecue sauce. But I've designed this one, it's really nice and light and tangy with a bit of sweetness and heat at the end. So it goes really nice with that juicy, fatty pork, keeps it nice and light, and we can just pour that all in. Now we can squeeze on some honey for extra sweetness, just about 2 tablespoons worth. And then I've got water here. So we just want to cover them about 3/4 the way up, just so it mostly tenderizes, but we don't want them to stew. What we'll do near the end of the cook time is take the foil off and reduce this sauce down so it's nice, thick and sticky. Perfect. Now we can just give them a quick little coating in that sauce, cover with foil and it's straight back onto the barbecue. Around this 2-hour mark is a good time to check on that water pan, top it up with any boiling water if you need. Also, just check on the temperature in general and adjust your air vents as needed. A delicious accompaniment with these pork belly burnt ends is my crisp apple pickle. Really simple to make, but we're using apple cider vinegar because that goes great with apple. First thing that we need to do is just go into a jar with some salt, sugar and boiling water. You can give that a quick little stir to help the salt and sugar dissolve. And then straight in with our apple cider vinegar. And now I'm just going to slice my apple into really thin battens. Last little bit. Now this can add straight into our pickling liquid. Make sure it's fully submerged in there. I find jars the easiest way to pickle anything. You can get the mix really compact. Get your spoon in there. And then ideally just leave this for a couple of hours just to absorb all that delicious pickling liquid. These pork belly bites have been bathing away in our beautiful boating liquid. It's time to remove that foil and let that reduce down into a nice thick sticky sauce. So let's check them out. I can already feel how soft and tender this pork is. Now that it's fully cooked through and nice and pillowy, all that we need to do is just reduce that sauce so it coats and caramelizes on our pork. There's only so much smoked pork that you can smell for the whole day without trying to gnaw off your arm. I'm so excited to check these out. Let's have a look. They're looking good. We can take them off the barbecue and leave them to rest. Now that these have rested, we can just give them a quick little toss in that sauce and then onto our beautiful serving plate. They are just screaming out for that pickle. You can see our pickle in here. It's almost fizzy with that beautiful vinegar and sugar. I know this is going to be such a delightful contrast against that rich, fatty pork. There's our deliciously sweet, sticky and incredibly soft pork belly bites with a crisp apple pickle.